What is going on, investors? Hopefully you guys are doing well out there. Welcome back to the Equity Empire podcast, where the topics and the conversation, it all comes from you. So make sure you send me an email, team@myequityempire.com. I'd love to hear from you. Today's question comes from a premium subscriber, which I really appreciate. And they've been seeing all of this stuff happening in software, seeing the SaaS stocks like ServiceNow and Salesforce, Adobe. Those are kind of your blue chip SaaS software stocks, if you will. And they've been seeing them sell off, have one of the worst months in a long time, really coming off a year where they underperformed the market as well. So there's a lot of questions around software as a service. And that's where Wall Street attention is at the current time. But on today's video, I want to reframe the discussion around SaaS software and get you to start thinking about it differently. And that, when a stock like ServiceNow or Salesforce or Adobe or any of these software stocks goes down, it creates opportunity. And I'm not going to sit here and say that there's not opportunities in some of these names, some of these stocks. But is there a bigger opportunity we're missing here? Is there a bigger opportunity in what traditionally known as software in the investing world? And on today's podcast, I'm going to be talking about the opportunity that I believe smart investors are already identifying and they are going to act on through 2026. And this is going to become a bigger story later on. And it correctly identifies, in my opinion, which companies, it's not just software companies. That's what's exciting about this framework. That if you start to look at AI and the output of it and the process of it differently, then traditional SaaS software has got us to think about software. Traditional SaaS software has us thinking about a human behind a desk with a computer in front of them interfacing with their work. It's helping them do tasks, maybe automates a little stuff, but it certainly speeds up maybe repetitive tasks and speeds up data storage and data retrieval. But it's really just a user interface into a software system. Smart investors, I believe right now, are starting to identify with what I would call a brand new layer of the economy. Some people might say this is a brand new layer of software, brand new layer into the workforce. It doesn't really matter how you think about it, but smart investors are starting to think about the agentic layer. And I know that's a buzzword. We'll cut through it here in a moment and we'll get to the heart of the matter as it relates to investing in these types of stocks. But the agentic layer, in my opinion, is becoming a new layer, not just to software, but the entire economy. And it's early days. This is like 1999 when some of the first e-commerce websites were going. This is like 1999 when the New York Times is putting some of their content online. And now these publications are all done online these days. So it's still very early. It's still extremely early when we're talking about agents and computers completing tasks. But it's not too early to think about this from an investment standpoint. Here's what I mean, is that we are moving into an era where instead of software being an interface, being a tool, being something that is a part of our job, the software, or in this case, the AI agents, they're actually going to do the actual work. And we're seeing this right now. If you're into computer coding, you will find, and this goes for any coder of any level, particularly the highest levels. And that's where I tend to go for my advice on these types of things. I'm not a high level coder. I'm, intermediate at best, but I'm listening to some of the best in the world and they're saying I'm coding way less. I am hard coding things less and less, to the point some admit they don't code at all. They're just orchestrating, in this case, the code agent. So the computer system is completing and writing the code. Now the person behind the desk is not using the software to complete their task. The software is completing all of the task. They're writing the entire line of code. They're debugging it. They're coming up with different options if things don't work. They're even on the product side. Whereas if you ask for suggestions on features to add Or if you are in between two different solutions, the AI will actually give you advice and say, based on your code base, based on your usage, based on where your end goal is with this piece of code, here's what you should do, or here's what I would do. It is far more of a teammate than a piece of software. And in a lot of cases, and I think definitely going forward, that the computer systems will become a new layer of the economy, a new workforce, if you will. Think about that. I know it's easy to do that with robotics, and we'll come back and revisit that argument and that thesis another day. Because here's what's exciting, is over the next 10 years, we're actually going to layer on two, not one, but actually two new layers to the economy. You are going to have the agentic layer at the computer level, writing codes, sending emails, making marketing plans, contacting customers, doing data research, coming up with conclusions, managing supply chains, managing logistics. That is going to mesh with the robotics in the physical world. We're already seeing it in Tesla cars and Waymo cars. You have an AI agentic system driving the car. That is what's coming. And then obviously when we get to robotics and humanoids, they are going to be doing some of the physical labor, moving the boxes in the Amazon warehouse, which they already do. But you get out of that enclosed environment, they're going to be mowing the lawns. They're going to be building the houses. They're going to be security at an event. They are going to be a part of the United States and, in a lot of ways, the world's armies going forward. This is a big shift. We're layering on two things, two technology stacks at the same time onto the economy. Right now, you just have humans. Pretty soon, you are going to have this agentic layer of software, and you are going to have robotics. But we're going to stick with agentic software, because here's the interesting thing from an investor standpoint, is it's going to redefine who wins in this era. In the SaaS software era, you had to create a tool that allowed the human to do a task. So if it's Adobe, it's edit a video or a photo. If it's Salesforce, it's input customer data, it's have a system of record for your customers and your marketing, and maybe create some workflows and some notifications for you to do something. But in the past, before the AI era and the agentic era, Salesforce didn't really do anything. It just stored and was a user interface for a human. Well, going forward, things are going to change. And we have to start looking at software as a much broader piece of technology that is actually going to benefit a lot more companies. Now, I'll give you a couple of examples so you can start to frame this and think about this. If you look at what Visa has announced more recently, so Visa is working on what they call the Trusted Agent Protocol. That literally was just released last year. This is going to allow Visa to identify, properly verify, and in a secure environment, allow for hundreds, if not thousands, of agent transactions. And by agent, I mean the computer system is going to be making this decision. I'll give you an example so you can kind of think in your mind how this would work. Let's assume I run a manufacturing business and I make a product that has 50 different raw materials that go into it. Things like metal screws, maybe there's like a rubber gasket that goes in it. Maybe there's different types of plastic and glass. We put this thing together. And obviously all of those parts have different lead times. So let's say, for example, the gaskets are super cheap and the screws are super cheap. I can get those on Amazon even in a pinch. And so I'm not really too worried about my lead time there. If I get a huge rush of orders, 100 orders come in, well, I can go to Amazon and backfill some supply. I might be able to go to Home Depot for some of the things in my product. But let's assume there's some custom made stuff in there, or some stuff made of some material, whether it's a rare earth or a magnet or something that's custom, or it's just harder to get. I can't get on a phone, or I can't press a button on Amazon and get 100 of these things the next day. Well, obviously I need to manage my inventory very carefully there. And obviously in the past, this has been done by human with the aid of computer systems. And the computer systems have been, they're getting good, and they've been good at inventory level here, send you a notification. Inventory comes here, you should do this. It'll essentially an alert system. Well, obviously where we're going with this, and it is already happening, is that at the agentic software layer, you can have that inventory management system running. One that more or less exists today, or you can custom make one as well, where when an item gets low, based on the variables, whether I can get this on Amazon, it's a replaceable part, it's very easy, it's off the shelf, it's OEM, or this is the custom made part. And if I want to maintain a certain level of raw material in my inventory, well, I need to pre-order these 30 to 60 to 90 days in advance before I need them. The computer system will know those variables. And in the past, they would alert the human who would get on the phone or click the button on Amazon. Well, obviously, in an agentic world, the computer system is actually making the purchase. Now, obviously, me as an organization, I need to make sure those credentials of that credit card or that account is verified to be me, verified to be my agent that is running. But imagine how smoothly that operation would work. That as the sales come in, as the sales data is loaded into the system, as the inventory starts to trickle out, well, the computer system knows all this, very similar to how a human, and it starts to connect the dots. Sales come in, new raw materials need to come in. Here's the timing, here's the flow of it. Obviously, Visa wants to be there for that because that is going to become a gigantic business. I just gave you one example. There are hundreds you could think of in an organization where a human is approving purchases that could actually be done by a computer system. Stripe also just fundraised a ton of money. If you are not on the back end of designing website and taking payments, you might not understand the importance of Stripe. I would consider it, in some cases, maybe the enterprise version of a PayPal, if you will. That's probably oversimplifying what the company does, but it's the backbone of a lot of payments, recurring payments, any type of payments into a website. If it's not going through one of the leading platforms like an Amazon, an Etsy, or an eBay or something like that, if it's a third party that's not using Shopify and using kind of their payment flow, well, oftentimes you use Stripe. And so if you are an app developer, if you're a web developer, if you're trying to create a system of recurring payments, all those types of things are handled by Stripe. They're working on a same type of tokenized system for agentic commerce. So here's two examples of when this new layer of the economy starts to come in. Here's two companies on the payment side that are already set to benefit. And I think you can continue to come up with names and ideas and themes that are going to win in the agentic era. And the good news is, as you listen to this or as you watch this podcast, it's still very early. And one of the reasons why I like to get out in front of trends from an investor standpoint is over the next 6 months, we're going to have events that cause these stocks to sell off, whether it's an earnings event, whether it's some kind of news flow, whether it's geopolitics, whether it's something like tariffs or some government regulation or whatever it is. Something always happens that brings stocks down. But if you can constantly have this broader framework in your mind of where things are going, there's going to be ups and downs, bumps in the road, if you will. But if we have this broader framework of where the economy is going, where it's not just going to be humans and software doing work, it's going to be humans, it's going to be software, but there's also going to be an agentic layer doing things within an organization. And depending on the organization, they might have thousands or tens of thousands of this agentic layer doing stuff. It might do only one thing in an organization, but there are some organizations that could replace large swaths of their employees because of these AI agents. And so if you have that frame of reference, when you get the pullback on a bad earnings number or something happens, there's drama in the economy, drama in Washington, the market pulls back, or the market just technically reaches a level where there's just no natural new buyers, and so it sells off. Having this framework and understanding where things are going is going to make it easy to buy the companies that are likely to win in this new era. And I'm here to tell you, obviously, the Googles and the Microsofts and the Amazons, I mean, this is entry-level stuff from the companies that are going to win. But when we start to look at the new era of economy, payment flow between agent to e-commerce, agent to another business, that is going to become a big layer of the economy, and Visa and others are going to be there. Now, as you can imagine, this is going to open up a massive opportunity for the cybersecurity names. Many of them are going to be reporting earnings over the next couple of weeks. So if you're a premium subscriber and you're like, Colin, you're so bullish on a lot of these names, just understand, we're super early to this. There's very few organizations in the world that are running this agentic layer, but they are going to. This is just like 1998, 1999, having the vision that everybody's going to have a website. Everybody is going to direct their traffic and their commerce to their website. And in 1998, there were plenty of people, first of all, that didn't have a website. And there was plenty of people on Wall Street that believed that was never going to happen. The same thing was true for social media. There was this belief at one time that only people would get on social media and that, a business didn't need to have a Facebook account. I mean, it sounds absurd today, but that was the belief on Wall Street. That was one of the bear case arguments against social media at the time, was that it wasn't going to be used by businesses. It was just going to be kind of a people and peer-to-peer type thing, and it wasn't ever going to get that big. Obviously, that all turned out to be dead wrong. But just understand, we're early here. And just because I say I like names doesn't mean we need to run out and go buy this stuff. There is a process of developing a thesis, understanding where your thesis is versus where the market is. And I guarantee you, based on the SaaS sell-off that we've seen over the past couple of weeks, the market is still a year behind where the broader economy is going to go. They'll see this thing a year later. Typically, Wall Street's ahead. And I would say in these well-formed and these well-defined industries, they're always forward-looking. But with technology, especially technology that is evolving as quickly as AI is, and it's been evolving just over the past couple of weeks, let alone year or just couple of months, they are going to be massively behind here. They're still trying to figure out what is going to happen in software, let alone understanding that there's going to be this new layer to the economy, the agentic layer, and it's coming quickly, and it's going to impact things from end to end. And so obviously at that layer, very exciting, both from a cybersecurity perspective, but also an identity perspective. And in the past, our identities was tied to, maybe it was a password in the past, maybe it was some biometrics, a fingerprint, a face scan, those types of things. Depending on what you're securing, a password might be good enough. Obviously, we've moved into the era of two-factor authentication. You try to log into something, then you get a text message or an email, and it creates a little bit of friction, if you will. Well, in an agentic world where I need these things to be firing off and going super fast and being super efficient, obviously there needs to be a new layer of identification there. And that maybe some of the stuff, certainly the biometric stuff, at least from a face and a fingerprint standpoint, doesn't really apply to the agentic layer. And here's the crazy thing is these companies, these cybersecurity companies, are already making moves here. You have Okta, which is really centered around identity. They're already making stuff for AI for agents. CrowdStrike's making acquisitions here just more recently. Palo Alto has been making numerous acquisitions over the past year. They're looking at this. Obviously, Microsoft as well, both on the enterprise security side, but also enterprise software side, if they can kind of create an end-to-end solution, if you will, for agents. Microsoft is very well positioned here. Side note is if you look at the operating systems that are required for humans, and by operating system, I mean what's running on your computer. You're either running a Macintosh or you're running a Windows PC. Some people still prefer Linux, but that tends to be a minor use case, if you will. However, Microsoft and Apple are designed for human interfaces, human eyes, human touch points, I need big buttons. I need things laid out in a visual way. An agent or a robot doesn't need that. An agent and a robot doesn't necessarily need, different types of help or different types of ways to access things on Microsoft Windows. So a stripped down version of an operating system that an agent runs on, this is going to become a massive business here. And obviously the normal players, the Microsofts and the Apples and certainly Google as well, are going to have a massive opportunity here. So as this new layer of economy is layered on, you are going to have cybersecurity, you're going to have payments, you are going to have new operating systems. This is all going to be very exciting. So now I want to get into, from an investor standpoint, how this is all going to roll out, because the way I see it, this is going to roll out in different phases as organizations of different sizes and different technology needs. They're going to roll this out, not necessarily all at once, but certainly the more aggressive ones will. The companies that I am looking at that are winning are absolutely designing humans out, creating agentic workflows. But right now, I would say largely we're in what I would call a phase one. And this is where agents replace individual tasks. So it could be proofreading something. It could be creating an outline for a marketing draft. It could be summarizing some large file of documents. It could be summarize this meeting I just had. Right now, the agent is a sidekick or a co-pilot, if you will, and that's where the market is focused on. They're focused on these co-pilots. They're focused on these agents that are replacing portions of tasks. And I would argue that these agents have opened up new use cases, but this is more akin or more like the previous era of software, where the software sped up my workflow, handled portions of it. Now, don't get me wrong. AI is opening up so many more use cases that we just didn't have, because now instead of just a dumb piece of software that is linear guided by the guardrails of the platform. So if it's Salesforce, it's get customer name, put it here. Get customers, status as a customer, put it here. Link it to maybe their social platform, create something. The software was linear. Now with AI, it can actually go out into the world and do stuff. It can actually contact that prospect. It could have a conversation with that prospect, send out some cold emails, get some responses, draft some replies, send them out, test the effectiveness of those things, all in real time. I gave you an inventory example as well. But more or less what we are going to see is right now in phase one, and a lot of people are going to say, hey, this isn't that impressive. It's co-pilots layered onto existing software. It's not necessarily replacing a ton of humans. It is making humans, certainly on the coding side, but in customer service as well, far more efficient. And so those teams inside of organizations don't necessarily have to grow as much. On the software development side, maybe you don't need as many junior developers. You just have senior developers aimed or armed with code products, either Claude Code or Codex or whatever they decide to use. Phase one, we're there. In phase one, we're working through it. And I would say, and I would argue that based on what I'm seeing at large organizations, this is not the big tech organizations, but everybody outside of technology, they're not really implementing phase one yet. Maybe they've bought Copilot for their employees and they have access to it, but nobody's really using it in a major way. Now, phase two is where it gets exciting, and this is really what we're trying to get out ahead of from an investment standpoint, at least from a thesis point of view. Because I think people probably hear me say, well, we need to get out ahead of this. We need to buy these stocks. We need to start going all in on this. That's an amateur way of thinking from an investor standpoint. Really what you need to do is just have your framework in place. Take that as a tool to when you go and look at the cybersecurity space and you're like, I want to build out the cybersecurity portion of my portfolio. Well, now you have this framework and this understanding that's going to make that research and that process so much easier. Phase two is where these AI agents get so good that they start replacing entire workflows, entire divisions of companies. Now, it's already happening right now. You're seeing it a little bit at the customer service space. You're seeing it a lot at the agentic coding area. And so there are specialized use cases for sure. In legal, there's been a lot of stories over the past couple of weeks, certainly the past month. It's a sector that I follow. I don't talk about it much. But in legal, what you're finding is the agentic or AI layer is absolutely replacing some of the work or a lot of the work or all of the work that a paralegal used to do, kind of the pencil pusher, and we say that affectionately to the paralegal community. And those people were doing a lot of the hard work. At a legal organization, you're starting to phase that out to where the AI is drawing up the contracts, double checking case law, onboarding different types of clients that might have a settlement or a case to bring against somebody. The agentic layer is starting to do that. On the billing side, I'm seeing it. On the content creation side, you are starting to see it. A lot of the discussions that are happening on Twitter, you can find out after a while that they are absolutely AI because they'll forget the context. Somebody will say something in a tweet thread that you might be observing or even happening yourself, and they'll forget something they said 5 tweets ago. And that's just an example of context window. And so it's easy to tell when these things exist, but it is starting to trickle down to all of society. You're going to see billing agents. You'll see this replace parts of insurance, different paperwork and underwriting and risk management in the insurance business, certainly on the marketing side there as well. And soon, this is something that is really only being done, I would say, at the startup level and the cutting edge business level. But very soon, you're going to have phase 3. This is where agents and agents communicate. Now, those of you that are on the super technical computer science side, you already know this is already happening at a small scale. I'm talking about from an investment, S&P 500, big tech, capital scale. We're not seeing this yet, but very soon you are going to have one agent over here that needs something or needs to communicate with somebody over here. In the past at another business, that would be email to email. Before that, it was phone to phone. Phone to phone, email to email, text message to text message, even hopping on a plane and visiting somewhere. That used to be done human to human during working hours. So it was hard when you were on the East Coast or West Coast or one side of the country, other side of the world. There are some barriers there. The 9 to 5 workday, the Saturday and Sunday where that work and that communication can't get done. It has to be put off till Monday. Holidays. Well, in a world where you have a new layer of the economy, the agentic workflow that works 24/7, 7 days a week, never gets tired, doesn't need a vacation, doesn't need PTO, doesn't need any of that. Well, now you're going to have communication between those two. And you're going to have agent to agent communication. You're going to have a knowledge base, a database, something over here that company A has. Company B needs to tap into that knowledge base, needs to ask it a question. Where are you with your inventory? So the example I gave you earlier about inventory management, there's where you can have agent to agent communication, where you can have the end manufacturer and the supplier. You could have their two agents communicating, where over at the manufacturing level, I'm running low on a specific type of gasket that is custom made by this company over here, and that's my supplier. Well, wouldn't it be amazing if my agent over here gave them a heads up and said, hey, we're a week out from buying 100 of these. Just letting you know now, we're not placing the order. Don't consider it binding, but just based on the trends that we are seeing, we're going to be ordering these 100 of them next week. Well, it can communicate that to that agent, and depending on the supplier and how they want to handle the workflow after that, they can pass that off to a human, or they can have that agent inside of their organization that is getting the potential order. They can start doing the things that they need to do, lining up employees, lining up the raw materials, the rubber that they are going to need to fulfill this order. That's the era that we're moving in. And certainly as you move into an era where the agentic layer is driving the cars, we're already there. Waymo and Teslas, they exist and they work, and There'll be a bumpy road to get these nationwide, or at least in the largest markets. The government is going to want to put their hand in there and act like the overlords that they always do whenever new technology comes out. But at the end of the day, the agents are going to be driving the cars. And so you're going to have agent-to-agent communication. Somebody orders something from a restaurant. Wouldn't it be amazing if the computer system takes that order, and this is how it's going to work. The order is going to come into McDonald's. McDonald's system is going to notify the autonomous agent that is driving the vehicle, whether it's a Tesla or a Waymo or whatever delivery vehicle it is, get it staged in front of the McDonald's. And when the food is ready, the food is put in the delivery vessel, whether it's a car or a drone or one of these smaller robots on wheels, and the food's going to get delivered. This is how the phases are going to roll out of this new economy, where it's not just humans and software, it's a completely new agentic layer that is going to require payments to flow, identity, security, and obviously a software layer behind them, whether that is custom written or some off-the-shelf stuff made by either Microsoft or one of the incumbent SaaS players as well. Now, a dark horse idea that you're not seeing a ton of people talk about is that this agentic layer does need specific hardware as well. You are seeing this in the kind of tech geeky community, if you will, the guys and girls and the businesses that are really experimenting with this stuff and really taking the guardrails off of AI or using an open source thing like OpenClaw. They are taking the guardrails off this and installing it on these large, either Mac Studio, which I think are like $10,000 computers that Macintosh makes, or they're using Mac Minis, or they're using, NVIDIA has a solution, I think they call it the GGX Spark, which is essentially a high performance computer meant to run large language models. So there's going to be this whole hardware layer that is going to be required here because yes, some of this agentic layer can be run in the cloud. You can run this off a virtual machine. You can run this in some cases off of a traditional Amazon Web Services or a Google Cloud or other types of hosting services. If you're doing just kind of low level type of stuff, you don't even need to pay that much. But an organization is going to want to have the physical infrastructure, depending on what it's handling, but critical infrastructure stuff that relates to profits and customers and sensitive data. They're going to want to have that physical infrastructure in their sites. Now, it could be at an Oracle site. It could be at an Amazon site. That is one opportunity. The other opportunity is it's actually sitting on the desk inside of an office building or inside of a secure environment, that these agents become so valuable that you have this new on-prem use case for them. And so companies that manufacture the systems that can operate these will have massive advantage. Obviously, Apple comes to mind, Microsoft from just both the software and a little bit of the hardware side, but really you go down the stack on their partners. The Dell computers, the HPs, the Lenovo's, some of them are public companies, some of them aren't. But there is some opportunity there as well. Also, NVIDIA making specific hardware too. If you're looking for NVIDIA, they don't need to do it now. But if you're looking for NVIDIA to further diversify how they make money, this is another way to do it. And so this is going to be where the market is going. And Wall Street doesn't realize it yet. And I would say the average investor doesn't realize it when Wall Street doesn't realize that it's not just going to be humans. It's not even really the fact that you have large language models like Anthropic or OpenAI or Grok or Gemini. It's not that they're going to be so good that it eliminates all types of software, that I can sit here and just vibe code myself a CRM system, vibe code myself an inventory management system, vibe code me some customer facing user interface login system, vibe code me an e-commerce shop. You could certainly do that. I don't actually think that's a very exciting use case. I don't even think that is going to be where the attention in Wall Street in the long run is going to be. At some point, they're going to wake up and realize like how that all shakes out is somewhat irrelevant to the opportunity that we have a brand new layer of the labor force coming in. In fact, we have two, but it is going to be preceded by the agentic layer where it's not just going to be doing stuff on a screen. It's actually going to be doing stuff within an organization, making decisions, contacting customers, directing inventory, buying inventory, directing the organization and guiding the organization where it needs to go, whether it's from a content perspective, an idea generation, or just handling work that comes in. Lead comes in, sales flow is triggered. Customer data comes in for an insurance policy, risk is measured, automatically covered, certificates of insurance automatically filled out, ID card sent. The workflow across the entire economy is going to create a new layer. Very soon after that, it will combine, and it already is, with the robotics layer. And so you are going to have humans working alongside agents and robots in this new economy. That's where things are going. And so, yes, we can spend our time debating whether people and organizations are going to be using ServiceNow or Salesforce, or is Adobe going to be able to come up with their own automatic video editing robot and AI tool. The fact that they haven't done it yet probably should tell you and give you a lot of clues of why that stock is down. All of that is irrelevant with the opportunity that we have here coming with this agentic layer when it comes to payments, when it comes to security, and then when it comes to the software in which those agents can operate under. You don't have to give them traditional Adobe software. You don't have to give them traditional operating systems. They can be custom made for that agentic layer. And then on top of that, you have a hardware layer that layers on here as well. As all of these agentic systems, instead of a desk, instead of a seat, instead of HR, I need some physical place on a computer system where that agentic workflow lives. It can be as simple as a laptop. It can be a higher end desktop machine like a Mac Studio. It can go all the way up to kind of an enterprise version of a DGS Spark or NVIDIA solution. It can run the gamut, but that is where we're going. And so while Wall Street has its focus on kind of old SaaS and whether or not they're going to be able to pick themselves up off the mat, it's like an old athlete that has had a great career. Are they going to be able to win one more game? That's what Wall Street is arguing about. Whereas the smart investors are looking over here and saying, this is the future. This is the athlete that just got drafted and in 5 to 10 years is going to have all the endorsement deals. Everybody's going to be talking about on the sports networks. All the fans are going to be wearing their jerseys. We have an opportunity to be there, not necessarily with 100% of our portfolio, but with a portion of our portfolio. We know where the market is going. Wall Street is paying attention to the geriatric community within software. We have an opportunity to shift our focus to where it's going. And I can confidently say this is exactly where it's heading. And I can't wait to continue to talk about it here on the podcast. That wraps up for today's show. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Whatever platform you happen to be on, maybe consider hitting the 5-star rating or 1-star. I don't really care. I just want some star ratings. If you're on YouTube watching this, you can hit the thumbs up button or the subscribe. And the other thing you can do is send me an email, team@myequityempire.com. Send me an email, send me your questions, and we'll address them on a future episode. That wraps it up for today. I hope you all have a wonderful day. We'll see you again later this week. Until then, good luck with your investments.